Well now, it all came to a head on a warm southern night, under lantern light that swung like whispers in the breeze. Cheyenne stood face to face with the past he thought he'd buried, and Amber's heart beat loud enough to wake the crickets. The bridge where they carved forever was watching. The festival was roaring, and one gunshot split the air like a clap of judgment. Secrets rose like smoke, and love stood trembling between truth and ruin. And right there, in that charged silence, the story took a turn nobody in town will ever forget. The rain poured like it was trying to wash the whole town clean. Cheyenne stood there, soaked to the bone, watching Amber's face shift between guilt and surprise. Clay didn't move. He just leaned against the wall like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. "What's going on here?" Cheyenne's voice wasn't loud, but it was deep, steady, like thunder rumbling far away. Amber stepped forward quickly. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" he snapped. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're hiding out here with him." Clay chuckled under his breath. "Boy, you sure got a jealous streak." Cheyenne ignored him, eyes locked on Amber. Her hands trembled. "He was just talking. I told him to stop." "In the dark? Behind the diner?" Cheyenne asked. His words cut like a cold wind. She couldn't answer, and sometimes silence is louder than truth. That night, Cheyenne didn't walk her home. He turned and left, his boots splashing through puddles. Behind him, the old oak tree swayed in the storm like it could feel everything falling apart. The next few weeks were quiet, too quiet. Cheyenne stopped coming by the diner. Amber still showed up at the oak tree some nights, waiting, but he didn't come. She left folded notes in the hollow of the trunk. He never opened them. Meanwhile, Clay kept circling. Folks said they saw him around Amber more often. Some said she looked confused. Others whispered she liked the attention. The town, with its slow afternoons and porch talkers, started buzzing like a hive. One Sunday after church, Cheyenne's mama sat him down. "You love that girl?" she asked, her eyes steady. "Yes, ma'am," he answered. "Then you better decide if you're gonna fight for her or let that snake slither his way in." Her words dug deep. That night, Cheyenne walked to the oak tree. Amber was there, her dress brushing the grass, her hair down. When she saw him, her eyes filled up like a storm about to break. "I thought you weren't coming back," she whispered. "I didn't know if I should," he replied. Under the moonlight, they held each other for the first time in weeks. But even in that embrace, a shadow lingered. Trust, once cracked, never feels quite the same. Clay didn't like being ignored. When Amber started keeping her distance, he got bolder. He waited by her house after work, leaned against his truck, tossing pebbles into the road like he owned the night. One evening, Amber came home late. Cheyenne had offered to walk her, but she said she'd be fine. When she turned the corner, Clay stepped out. "Evenin', sweetheart," he drawled. "Clay, please. I told you to stop," she said, holding her bag tight. He moved closer, a sly grin on his face. "I ain't done nothing wrong. I'm just saying, a girl like you deserves more than some boy fixin' tires all day." Amber's breath caught. "Don't talk about Cheyenne." "Why not? You think he can give you the world? Look at me. I can take you places he can't even imagine." She backed away. "Go home, Clay." But his eyes darkened. "One day you'll see. He ain't the only one who wants you." A neighbor opened their porch light, and Clay melted back into the night. But Amber's hands shook all the way to her door. She didn't tell Cheyenne what happened. Maybe she thought she could handle it. Maybe she was afraid of what it would start. Summer turned into fall, and the air carried that sweet, sharp smell of change. Cheyenne and Amber tried to fix things. They laughed again, walked by the river, planned their wedding under the oak like they used to, but Clay was still around. One afternoon, Cheyenne found a note tucked under Amber's window. It wasn't from her friends. It wasn't from her family. It was from Clay. "When you finally get tired of his small world, you know where to find me. See." Cheyenne's blood boiled. He stormed into town, found Clay leaning on his truck near the general store. "You stay away from her," Cheyenne growled. Clay just smirked. "Or what?" Cheyenne shoved him. Clay laughed. You think she's yours forever? People change, boy. Sweethearts don't always last. Before Shane could hit him, Mr. Jenkins, the store owner, came out and broke it up. But the fire had already been lit. Everyone in town felt it. Something big was coming. The night of the harvest dance arrived. It was the biggest event of the year. Folks came from nearby towns. Lanterns hung from trees, music filled the air, and couples danced under the stars. Amber wore a soft blue dress that made her look like a piece of the evening sky. Shane couldn't take his eyes off her. For the first time in a long while, everything felt right. They danced slow, their foreheads touching, the world shrinking to just them. But then Clay showed up. He walked straight into the dance like he belonged there, eyes locked on Amber. People stepped aside, whispering. He tipped his hat at Shane, then reached out to Amber. May I have this dance? The whole town held its breath. Amber froze. Shane's hand tightened around hers. This was it, the moment where promises met temptation, and love faced its first real test. The fiddles played on. The lanterns flickered. The night grew heavier. Amber looked at Clay, then at Shane. And in that long, aching silence, a single choice carried the weight of everything they'd ever built. Amber's heart pounded as she stood between the two of them. Clay's outstretched hand and Shane's tight grip. The music didn't stop, but it faded into the background. Like a distant hum she could no longer feel. People whispered under their breath, some leaning closer, some stepping back. Willow Creek loved a good love story, but it loved a scandal even more. Clay tilted his head, his smile thin and mocking. Just one dance, sweetheart. Unless you're scared. Shane's jaw clenched. She's with me. Amber swallowed. She hated being pulled in two directions. Hated how Clay's confidence made her flinch even when she didn't want to. She finally shook her head and whispered, No, Clay. The smirk slipped off his face for a second, like a mask cracking. Suit yourself, he muttered, and walked off into the shadows by the trees. The crowd slowly went back to dancing, but the air had changed. Shane held Amber close, his arms protective but stiff. She leaned her head on his chest, but inside, she felt something uneasy, like the wind before the rain. After the dance, the talk around town grew louder. Folks at the barber shop said Clay didn't like losing. Women at the diner said Amber should have been firmer. Some said Shane was too jealous. Others said he wasn't jealous enough. Gossip in Willow Creek spread faster than wildfire on a dry day. Shane tried to ignore it, focusing on work and saving for their wedding. Amber tried to keep smiling, but the whispers got under her skin. One night, she told Shane, Sometimes I feel like everyone's watching us, waiting for something bad to happen. He kissed her forehead. Then let's give him something good to talk about. Let's make this wedding happen. They decided on a date under the oak tree, just like when they were kids. Their families began to prepare, handmade invitations, baked pies, flowers from neighbors' gardens. But Clay wasn't done. He started leaving little signs again. A rose on her doorstep, a carved heart with his initials on a tree near her house. A voice in the dark sometimes, whispering her name just before she went inside. Amber told herself not to be afraid. But fear has a way of slipping in through cracks you didn't even know were there. One chilly evening, Amber was walking home after a late shift. The sky was dark, the streets almost empty. She heard footsteps behind her. Steady, slow. She quickened her pace. The footsteps followed. Amber! A voice called. She turned sharply. Clay stood there, his hands in his jacket pockets, that same easy grin on his face. What do you want, Clay? She asked, her voice shaking a little. Just to talk, he said, stepping closer. There's nothing to talk about, she replied, backing away. He moved faster, closing the space. You're making a mistake marrying him. You belong with someone who can give you more. You know that. No, she said firmly this time. I don't love you. Something in his face changed. The grin disappeared. You will, he muttered, then brushed past her, his shoulder hitting hers hard. Amber ran the rest of the way home, locking her door behind her. She didn't tell Cheyenne what happened. She wanted peace, not more fire. But in keeping that secret, she unknowingly opened the door for something far worse. The next morning, Cheyenne found a note slipped under the repair shop door. It wasn't signed, but he knew that handwriting. You can fix engines, boy, but you can't fix what's coming. His hands shook as he read it. His uncle saw his face and asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Cheyenne lied. He didn't want Amber to worry, but a seed of dread had been planted deep inside him. He started watching her house from a distance at night, making sure Clay didn't show up again. Some nights he'd hear a truck engine in the distance. Other nights, only silence and crickets. Amber noticed the tension growing in him. "Cheyenne, you're scaring me," she said one evening under the oak tree. "I just don't trust that man," he replied. "Then trust me," she whispered, holding his face in her hands. He wanted to. Lord knows he wanted to. But love mixed with fear has a strange way of twisting itself, making even steady hearts tremble. The wedding day was drawing near. The town was buzzing. Miss Lila baked 3 kinds of pies. Mr. Jenkins offered his barn for the reception. The old oak tree had been cleaned up, ribbons tied around its thick branches. But a week before the wedding, Amber disappeared for 2 hours after her diner shift. Cheyenne waited at the oak tree, worried. When she finally arrived, breathless, she said, "I went to visit my aunt on the other side of town. I lost track of time." Something in her eyes didn't match her words. Cheyenne forced a smile, but inside, his thoughts churned like muddy water. Later that night, as he walked home, he saw Clay's truck parked near the old river road, the same direction Amber had come from. Clay wasn't inside. The truck sat there, empty, like a warning left in plain sight. That night, Cheyenne couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, hearing her words over and over. "I lost track of time. Trust is fragile. Sometimes it doesn't shatter all at once. Sometimes it cracks slowly, like ice on a winter pond, until one step too many makes it give way completely." The closer the wedding day came, the stranger Amber became. She smiled less, avoided long talks, and sometimes stared off at nothing, like she was caught between 2 worlds. Cheyenne noticed it all, but every time he tried to talk, she said she was just tired. One evening, they sat under the oak tree, watching fireflies blink against the night. Cheyenne reached for her hand. "Amber, are we okay?" She looked at him with soft eyes, but her words came slow. "We're okay, I think." "You think?" His voice carried the weight of all the years they'd shared. "I don't know what's wrong with me," she whispered. "Everything's moving so fast." He pulled her close. "We've been together our whole lives. If something's wrong, tell me. Don't shut me out." But she didn't say more. She just laid her head on his shoulder, while the oak tree stood silent, like it had heard this kind of quiet before long ago. The following Friday, Cheyenne's friend Luke came by the repair shop, looking uneasy. "Cheyenne," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I saw something last night you ought to know about." Cheyenne put down his wrench. "What is it?" Luke hesitated. "I saw Amber. She was near the river road, talking to Clay. Looked like an argument." She pushed him. He grabbed her arm. Then she walked off. Cheyenne's hands tightened. "Are you sure?" "I know what I saw," Luke said. "I didn't want to stir trouble, but man, it didn't look right." Cheyenne's mind spun like loose wheels. Amber hadn't said a word about it. Why? That night he walked to her house. She opened the door, surprised to see him. "Amber," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Where were you last night?" She froze for a fraction of a second, just long enough for him to catch it. "I was home. Don't lie to me." She looked down. "I went for a walk. I didn't want to worry you." "With Clay?" he pressed. Her silence was all the answer he needed. Something inside Cheyenne cracked that night. Not enough to break, but enough to never be the same again. Whispers spread through Willow Creek like smoke from a slow fire. Folks talked on porches, in church pews, at the market. "Amber's been seen with Clay," they murmured. "Cheyenne deserves to know." Some defended her, others shook their heads. Cheyenne tried to focus on fixing cars, but the image of her by the river with Clay haunted him. He started asking questions quietly. Some people told him to let it go. Others gave him strange looks like they knew more than they'd say. One afternoon, he walked past the diner and saw Clay sitting at the counter, smiling at Amber like he owned the room. She didn't smile back, but she didn't walk away either. Something about the way she stood there, still uncertain, made Shane's chest tighten. That night, he confronted her again. "Amber, tell me the truth. Are you having second thoughts?" She looked at him with tearful eyes. "I don't know what's happening to me, Shane. It's like he's everywhere I turn. I didn't ask for this. I didn't." He took her hands, desperate. "Then fight it. Choose us." She nodded weakly, but her eyes were far away. Sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive with a bang. Sometimes it creeps in slowly, wearing familiar faces, until you can't tell where love ends and danger begins. 2 days before the wedding, Shane couldn't sleep. He walked out to the oak tree in the dead of night, hoping the quiet would steady him. But as he approached, he saw something that froze him in place. There, under the tree where they carved their childhood promises, was Clay's truck, and next to it, Amber. She wasn't smiling. She looked upset, her hands waving in frustration. Clay stood close, too close. Shane stayed hidden in the shadows, his heart pounding like a drum in a storm. "Why won't you leave me alone?" Amber shouted. "Because you don't really want me to," Clay said with that lazy, dangerous grin. "If you did, you wouldn't keep showing up. I came to tell you to stop." He stepped even closer, lowering his voice. "You're scared of what you feel. You think marrying Shane will make it go away. But it won't." Amber turned away, her hands covering her face. Clay gently touched her arm, and she didn't pull back fast enough. Shane staggered back like he'd been hit. He didn't wait to hear the rest. He ran through the dark, the sound of his boots swallowed by the night. The oak tree, once their secret place, now held a secret that would tear everything apart. The next morning, Amber came to see Shane. Her face was pale, her eyes red like she hadn't slept. "We need to talk," she said. He didn't invite her inside. He stood on the porch, arms crossed, heart hardening. "I saw you," he said flatly. Her eyes widened. "What?" "Under the tree. With him. Last night." She stammered. "Shane, it's not what you think." "Don't," he cut in sharply. "I've heard that before." Tears filled her eyes. "I went to tell him to leave me alone. I swear. He doesn't stop." "Then why didn't you tell me?" She had no answer. Just silence. Shane's voice shook, part hurt, part anger. "This was our place, Amber. The one place I thought nobody could touch. And you brought him there." She reached for him, but he stepped back. "Shane, please." He looked at her one last time, then turned away. The door closed between them like the end of a long summer. Quiet, slow, and heavy. The town woke up buzzing the next day. Word had spread that Shane and Amber had argued. Folks always noticed things in Willow Creek. A look here, a late-night light there. Gossip grew legs fast. Amber didn't show up to the diner that day. People whispered she was embarrassed. Others said she'd run off to Clay. Shane stayed in the repair shop, working longer hours than usual. His hands busy, but his mind lost. That night, Luke came by. "Man, I know this ain't my place," he said. But people saw Clay's truck near Amber's house again. Shane's jaw clenched. "When?" "Last night. After y'all argued." Something cold spread through Shane's veins. He grabbed his jacket and started walking. Luke followed. They reached Amber's house just as the sun was dipping low. Her window light was on, and right there, parked across the street, was Clay's truck. Shane didn't knock. He barged in. Amber jumped, eyes wide. "Shane!" And then Clay stepped out of the kitchen, holding a glass of water like he owned the place. The silence that followed was the kind that presses on your chest, thick and heavy, daring you to breathe. "Get out," Shane said, his voice low and dangerous. Clay took a slow sip of water and set the glass down. "Relax, boy. We were just talking." Amber stood between them, shaking. "Shane, please." He cut her off. "Why is he here?" "I told him to leave," But he wouldn't, she said, tears filling her eyes. Shane's stare locked on Clay. You heard her. Leave. Clay smiled like the devil himself. She didn't make me leave. That tells you something, don't it? Shane moved fast, grabbing Clay by the collar. I said get out. They crashed against the door, knocking a picture frame to the floor. Luke rushed in to pull Shane back. Clay laughed, pushing his shirt straight. You keep pretending she don't got a choice, but deep down, you know? Then he walked out like nothing happened. Shane turned to Amber, breathing hard. Why didn't you tell me he was here? She whispered. I thought I could handle it. I didn't want another fight. But fights don't disappear when you avoid them. They just wait for the right moment to come roaring back. The next day, Amber showed up at the shop. Her eyes were swollen, like she hadn't slept. She stood in the doorway, twisting her fingers. Shane, can we talk? He didn't stop working. I think we've talked enough. Please, she whispered. You have to believe me. Clay's twisting everything. He shows up when I don't expect it. He says things that get in my head. I don't love him. I never did. He finally looked at her. But you let him close, Amber. You let him into places that belong to us. Tears ran down her cheeks. I made mistakes. I know. But I love you, Shane. I always have. He dropped the wrench, his hands trembling. Then why does it feel like I'm losing you? She stepped closer, desperate. Because I'm scared. Everything's spinning. But I want to fix this. He wanted to believe her. Lord, he did. But the image of Clay in her house was burned into him like a brand. Trust, once scorched, doesn't grow back the same way. 2 nights later, Amber disappeared again. Her mama called Shane in tears. She said she was just stepping out for a walk, but she never came back. Shane's heart dropped. He grabbed his jacket and ran into the night. The town joined the search. Lanterns flickering, voices calling her name through the dark woods and dirt roads. Shane's mind raced. Where would she go? Then he saw the faint glow of headlights near the river road. He ran toward it, and there, parked beneath the trees, was Clay's truck. The passenger door was open. He approached slowly, chest tight. Clay stood near the water, hands in his pockets, like he was waiting for him. She's not here, Clay said, smiling. Where is she? Shane demanded. Clay tilted his head. Wouldn't you like to know? Shane lunged at him, fury boiling over, but Clay sidestepped easily. You think you can keep her? She came to me, Shane. She chose to talk to me. Maybe she's not the girl you thought she was. The words hit harder than any punch could. Shane staggered back, breathless. And somewhere in the dark, Amber's name echoed through the night like a prayer without an answer. Hours later, they found her sitting alone at the edge of the old bridge, wrapped in her shawl, staring at the water. She wasn't hurt, but she was shaken. Shane knelt beside her. Amber, what happened? She whispered. I needed to think. Everyone's talking. Clay's everywhere. You're angry. I can't breathe. You should have told me where you were going, he said gently, though his voice trembled. She looked at him with tired eyes. I don't even know who I am anymore. I love you, but everything feels heavy. He sat beside her in silence, the night wind cold against their faces. I want this wedding, she said softly, but I need you to trust me, and I need to trust myself again. For the first time, Shane saw the fear behind her actions. Not just guilt, but confusion, exhaustion, and something broken deep inside. He held her hand. Then let's face it, together. But neither of them noticed Clay watching from the shadows, his face unreadable, his plans far from over. Shane stood on the bridge that crossed Willow Creek, the same bridge where he and Amber carved their initials years ago. The water below was dark, whispering secrets only the night could keep. He ran his fingers over the old carving, S plus A, now faded and cracked like their love. The wind picked up, and it almost sounded like the trees were sighing. He remembered the laughter, the stolen kisses, the promises. Now all that remained was silence and a heart that had been split like a log under a heavy axe. As he stared at the water, his phone buzzed. It was a message from someone anonymous. "She's not done yet." His blood ran cold. He looked around, but the road was empty. Just crickets, the soft creak of the bridge, and the haunting sense that the story wasn't finished. Something darker was still hiding in the shadows, waiting for its cue. Amber sat alone in her mama's old house, the one with creaking floors and peeling wallpaper that smelled like cinnamon and rain. Her hands shook as she held the letter Cheyenne had left for her weeks ago. She'd read it 100 times, each word carving itself deeper into her heart. She thought betrayal would be the end, but guilt had its own sharp claws. Her tears fell on the paper, making the ink bleed like an open wound. Outside, the night was thick and restless. A car stopped on the gravel road. Amber froze. No one should be there. Slowly, she walked to the window, and what she saw made her heart slam against her ribs like a hammer on wood. The figure stood by the gate watching, not moving, just watching. Cheyenne decided it was time to stop running. He returned to town and went straight to the church. The fall festival was in full swing. Lanterns swung gently, kids laughed, and the smell of roasted corn filled the air. But beneath the cheerful lights, tension ran like a river under thin ice. Folks whispered when they saw him. Some nodded. Some turned away. Then out of the crowd Amber appeared. She wore the same white sweater she had on the night they got engaged. For a moment, time folded in on itself. Two souls, once intertwined, now standing on opposite banks of a broken bridge. He took a step toward her. She didn't move. Before either could speak, a gunshot split the night. Lanterns swung wildly. Screams rose. Someone fell. Panic spread like wildfire. People ducked and ran. Cheyenne's heart pounded as he searched the crowd. He saw Amber on the ground, blood on her sleeve, fear in her eyes. He rushed to her, dropping to his knees, grabbing her hand. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice breaking like dry wood under pressure. But her gaze wasn't on him. It was over his shoulder. Cheyenne turned, and there he was, the shadow they both thought was gone, someone they both trusted once. His grin was cold, twisted, like a snake coiled and ready to strike. "Told y'all," he said softly. "This ain't over yet." The sirens wailed in the distance, but in that small, charged moment, everything stood still. The bridge, the betrayal, the promises. It all led to this final stand under the soft glow of festival lights. Cheyenne rose slowly, his fists clenched, his heart ready. Amber, bleeding but fierce, whispered, "End it." And there, beneath the southern night sky, with lanterns swaying like witnesses, Cheyenne took his first step toward a truth neither of them could run from anymore. The story wasn't done. No, sir. It had just reached the place where the past and present shook hands and decided who would survive.